We've already looked at the reasons that Europeans were interested in exploration to begin with. That thirst for knowledge, and their hope to make it to the east at a faster route. That exploration is going to be at the very front of what many countries wanted to do at this point in time. Portugal was one of the leaders in exploration. They're going to sponsor many explorers in their endeavors. Vasco da Gama is going to be responsible for sailing around the Cape of Good Hope and making it to India. Columbus, of course, as most of us have heard, in 1492, made it to San Salvador and quote-unquote discovered North America. He actually believed that he had made it to the East Indies, which is why he called the inhabitants Indians. Amerigo Vespucci was the one who was responsible for discovering the Americas. In fact, when people were writing about it, they didn't know that Columbus had already made it, so that is why America is named after Amerigo Vespucci. Vasco Balboa is going to be responsible for crossing the Isthmus of Panama, which was a little tiny strip of land, and then sailing on through the Pacific Ocean. Ferdinand Magellan is the first one to circumnavigate the globe, meaning he travels all the way around, or sailed all the way around the world. He technically did not make it himself. He died shortly before the voyage was over, but his ships made it. Conquistadors are what we call Spanish explorers. They were all, or Spanish conquerors, they all had three important things in mind: God, gold, and glory. Those were all three of the main objectives that those conquistadors were looking for. When Columbus first arrived, he wasn't sure what to think. He also believed that this was his land for the taking, that these Native Americans had an inferior society and that they should be taken over. One of the most initial impacts that Columbus and his men had was the impact of disease. These Native Americans had no immunity to European diseases and had never been exposed to it. So it makes them very sick and wipes out many. They had no immunity specifically to smallpox. Eventually, after Columbus is going to come upon these Native Americans, he does enslave them, but many of them were dying. And in an effort to continue to work the land, they're going to eventually import Africans, because many of those Africans already had exposure as well as immunities to those European diseases. And that was very important because that meant that they would not succumb to those diseases like smallpox specifically. After Spain and Portugal, who were both very important countries in exploration and who were the ones who were kind of leading the pack at this point, they are going to be continuing to compete for the same territory. So the two countries wind up going to the Catholic Church to help come up with a solution. The Treaty of Tordesillas was between Spain and Portugal and is going to draw a line that divided all future discoveries. They draw a line and say everything west of the line Spain would get, and everything east of the line Portugal would get. This is going to be very key if you look at a map to determine why these countries are going to go to different for example, that's why Brazil speaks Portuguese in many areas. So we'll look more at the impact that that decision had. This also explains why Portugal continues to explore the coast of Africa as opposed to continuing to go westward, whereas Spain focused most of its attention on the Americas. We will talk about something very important called the Columbian Exchange. This is the transfer of goods between societies. There were things in each continent that had their own indigenous plants and animals. For example, the Americas already had corn, potatoes, squash, tomatoes, peanuts, and tobacco. These were things that were not available in Europe, that Europeans had never seen. And once Columbus and other explorers arrive in North America, they are going to take these things back with them to Europe, which is going to make them very popular. They are also going to go and they come down with smallpox. Smallpox was this disease that is going to wipe out a very large portion of the Native American population. It completely decimates their population, which also made it very difficult for Native Americans to fight back against this European, what they considered an invasion. Europeans had horses, cows, pigs, and other technology that the Native Americans had never seen. And once again, when Europeans come to North America, they're going to introduce these things to the Native Americans, and these things quickly become a part of their way of life.